Intentional torts that involve harms against property. The group of torts will be trespass to land, trespass to chattel, and nuisance. In order to understand these, it's helpful to look first at the distinction between real property and personal property. Real property involves land, the buildings that are attached to the land, plants and vegetation. It includes the airspace above, the minerals below, also water. Personal property involves everything else. Such as televisions, cars, books, carpet. There are circumstances where personal property can actually become real property. For example, if you take a carpet and install it in the home and affix it in such a way that it's attached to the real property, it becomes what we call a fixture, and fixtures are part of the real property. So when we look at harms against property, in particular the trespass torts, let's start with trespass against chattel, or trespass to chattel. Chattel is another term for personal property, so that if a defendant without permission takes a plaintiff's or the victim's personal property, they can be found liable for a trespass to chattel cause of action. For example, if you loan your buddy your car and tell them you need it back by 7 o'clock, and they don't return the car till 10 o'clock, they've actually taken your car without permission, and you would have a cause of action for trespass to chattel. And keep in mind, you have to show damages to be successful and get an award. Trespass to land involves circumstances where a victim without authority or permission enters the land of a plaintiff. A couple of things to note is that entry without permission isn't as clear-cut as it always seems. For example, you might have people who come onto your land that actually have permission that you might not realize right off. For example, in your LA 100 class, you'll learn that land usually involves a bundle of rights where several people might have access and authority to be on one's real estate. If you have cable television set up in your house, or you're using the gas company to provide you gas, those individuals have a right to enter your land, to check the meters, to check the pipes, to check the cable boxes, and they cannot be found liable of trespass. Another highlight with this particular point of law is that trespass to land does not involve light, odor, or sound. So the final tort in this area is nuisance. Keep in mind, nuisance is going to address those harms that involve odor, light, and sound. You can also get things like pollution in here as well. For your exam, I'd like you to note that you have both public and private nuisances. So for the test, distinguish those. When you're dealing with a public nuisance, note that we're trying to protect against intentional harms to groups, to society, whereas with your private nuisance, we're looking at harms to an individual. So individuals here, this is where you might have a situation where your neighbor maintains a chicken coop, and the sound and the smell of the chickens, and suppose this is occurring in a residential neighborhood, that is causing you harm, you seek recourse under a nuisance cause of action. If you had a group that is impacted by the pollution that is given off by a company that is producing harmful gases, then the cause of action would be a public one, a public nuisance.